And welcome back. And if we sound a little bit giddy here in the studio, it's because of our next guest. He is Chuck Leavell, one of the legendary figures in rock history. Grew up, born in Birmingham, lived all over Alabama, now lives in Georgia. Chuck, I don't think that we have enough time left in this show to go through your resume, but you're best known for a number of different groups, the Allman Brothers, and obviously touring for 4 decades with the Stones. That doesn't even begin to tell your story, but hello, and thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Paul. I'm very, very flattered to be here. Really appreciate the invite.
Well, we are thrilled, and I would love to talk about music, but I read something about you recently that blew me away. And hanging out with Keith Richards and Mick Jagger on stage for 40 years, and being with the Allman Brothers after their terrible loss with Dwayne. But the fact that you're friends with Nick Saban, I just have to start there. Tell me about it.
Coach, I tell you what, we met a good while back, and it was actually some friends put us together at a dinner party. I knew that he was a Stones fan and a music fan in general, but especially the Stones. And we had just a wonderful time chatting. He told me that, he said, "Can you guess what song that I play after the game is over when I'm in the car on the way back to the hotel or home?" I said, "No, Coach, what?" He said, "We play Gimme Shelter at a very loud volume."
Chuck, I have to relate a quick story. About 7 or 8 years ago, and you may even remember that it was 2015, somewhere around there. I spent the day with him at practice, and as he was leaving, he called me over. He said, "I got to tell you something." I mean, like, Nick Saban called you over to tell you a secret. I'm like thinking, okay. And we walked out and got away from everybody. It wasn't practice. It was a summer camp. He was doing the kids' camp. And he said, "You'll never guess where I'm going right now. I'm about to go take a shower, get in a plane. I'm going to Atlanta." I said, "Tell me." He said, "I'm going to see the Stones." And you probably remember the night because he's been to a number of them. But and he saw you guys recently too, I think. I mean, talk about talking to him about music. I mean, he is downright giddy talking about music.
No, isn't that great? I mean, I just love it. And he's such a sweet guy. And, when we met, we hit it off straight away. I gave him a Stones cap with the tongue logo on it, and he gave me a signed football, and we've communicated back and forth a few times. Yes, he was in Atlanta recently when we played during the Hackney Diamonds tour in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We got to hang out in the special guest room before the show for a little while, and it's a little odd, a legendary football coach and a rock and roll piano player, but we're friends, and I just cherish his friendship.
Well, I won't. I'll move on from him because your career includes a few more interludes other than Nick Saban. But I couldn't. I've been meaning to ask you that. You were born in Birmingham. How did you get it? I mean, how did this music thing start?
Well, try to be brief about this, but my mother played the piano. She was not a teacher or a professional, but she played. I was the baby of the family. I just loved listening to her play, and she taught me a few simple things. And I just fell in love with the instrument. As I got a little bit older, rock and roll came around, and I started playing in various different bands. Grew up for the most part in Tuscaloosa. I think you mentioned that. Roll Tide, by the way. And of course, during the years that I was there, you had Coach Bryant. My dad was in the Exchange Club, and I remember Coach coming to speak at an event that Dad put together. That was way cool. There was a family right across the street from us that knew Joe Namath. And of course, he was star quarterback at the time. And he would go have a barbecue with these friends across the street, and we'd hide in the bushes. Man, there's Joe Namath. Is that cool? And I remember, players like Leroy Jordan and Mike Frocky, and of course Stabler the Snake during his time there. So it was just a great era to grow up in Tuscaloosa.
And as far as music, Chuck, I think too often, and you've done so many things, and there was recently just a documentary on you. You do a show for PBS. You spend a lot of time on things other than music, but it's almost typecast that you started with the Allman Brothers. I know that's not true, but was that your first brush with fame in terms of the rock world?
Yeah, that was a huge step. I was in bands prior to that. I played with Dr. John for a period of time before the Allman Brothers Band, and had done some recording with other artists, and was making my way up the ladder, so to speak. But to join the Allman Brothers Band was a huge step for me. I was barely 20 years old at the time. Fantastic opportunity. We recorded, the first record I did with them was called Brothers and Sisters. You might remember Ramblin' Man, and Jessica, the instrumental Jessica, was on that album. And so, from there, I had a nice close to 5 years with the brothers. And then I had my band Leavell for a while, and had the good fortune of joining the Stones in '82. And along the way, played with Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and David Gilmour. So I've just been very blessed.
A couple of minor figures in rock history, David Gilmour. I mean, and so much has been made out of your playing on the legendary Clapton MTV Unplugged. I mean, there were a couple of songs, but Leavell is the one that from that continues to be played. And I know I saw him on your documentary.
Yeah, he was kind enough to do an interview for the documentary, and that was a landmark show for sure. Little quick story. He called my name out after the song Alberta, Alberta, a traditional blues song at the end of it, and I couldn't believe they left it on the record. You hear him in his English accent say, Chuck Leavell. And I was on the phone to this woman, and she said, I just love that album, and I want you to know that my son loves that album. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing. How old is your son? And she said, he's 6. And he really gets excited when he hears your name called out in his English accent. I said, well, why in the world does a 6-year-old boy get excited at Chuck Leavell? She said, because he thinks Eric says chocolate milk.
That's fantastic. Chocolate Milk is joining us now as we talk about his legendary career. So, I mean, it's a story you've told a million times, but you're with the brothers. I mean, that's an incredibly famous group in rock history. But there may only be one group that tops the Stones, and they may not even top the Stones. But how did the connection start with you and Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Charlie Watt and the whole gang?
Well, Bill Graham was a good friend and a big promoter. You may know that name.
Absolutely.
Paul. And he loved the Allman Brothers Band. And when I came into the band, we became friends. Fast forward a few years later, he becomes tour director for the Rolling Stones. And the guys wanted to try some different blood on keyboards. And so Bill, God rest his soul, suggested my name. And within, I guess it was 36 hours or so of getting the phone call, I was on a plane to do the audition, and fortunately, it worked out.
I mean, it was not your first rodeo, but auditioning for this group, no matter what you had done in the past, that had to still be a little bit intimidating, didn't it?
It's funny, man, because when I had my first band, the Misfits, back in Tuscaloosa growing up, what did we play? British Invasion, a lot of British Invasion. So, when I got the call, it was a bit of a shock, hey, you got an audition with the Stones. But then I started thinking, Chuck, you played these songs when you were 13, So go up there and have fun. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you've had a wonderful experience. And fortunately, it did work out.
And I've only seen them 3 or 4 times, but it's almost indescribable. And I mean, you're a young man compared to Mick Jagger, but I mean, what's that experience like watching this man as you've seen him over 40 years? He doesn't look all that different, does he?
It's amazing, but I have to tell you, he works at it. Mick Jagger takes care of himself. We have a physiotherapist that is on board with us. He makes sure he works Mick out, does the stretching, watches his diet. And, he loves what he does. Basically, when you think about it, what is his main thing physically on stage? And that is sprinting. We have the ramps, and we have the side left and side right of the stage. And so he's running, but doing sprints basically back and forth. So they concentrate a lot on that to make sure, he's up for that task. And he's also just got an amazing metabolism, man. He's just a very healthy guy. I think it's some good genes in there.
So Chuck, at some point along the way, he named you the musical director for the Rolling Stones. I think I know what that means, but for another band, it might mean the guy who actually comes up with the set list. I don't know what it means when you're dealing with one of the most famous people in the history of music.
Well, it was very generous of them to bestow that title upon me. I think it came because when I started, I think it was back in 1989 when we were rehearsing for the Steel Wheels show, I kept copious notes of the songs we would do. I would do chord charts, handwritten notes, kept track of all of that. And I've done that ever since that time. And so, consequently, I've developed these two encyclopedic-like notebooks of all kinds of notes of all the songs that we've ever played. And so I became sort of the go-to guy. Oh, Chuck remembers the bridge. He remembers where the solo goes and that kind of thing. And if I couldn't remember, at least I had a reference for that. And then I did start working with Mick more closely about the set list. I kept databases of what we did in any given city the last tour so that we would look at that and make sure we didn't repeat ourselves too much and find some interesting material to play. So it's a multifaceted role, and I really do enjoy it.
So Chuck, how do you, so many songs. I mean, the book is endless. So many tours. I've seen you in the same place 3 times. How do collectively this group, which there have been books, movies, documentaries done on the relationship, how do you chisel it down to a workable set list?
Well, it is a challenge, I must say. So let's start with this. You know that there are certain iconic songs that fans, imagine that you've got fans coming for the first time or maybe the second time to a concert. So, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Start Me Up, Can't Always Get What You Want. There's going to be certain iconic songs that are going to be in that set. And then it's a matter of trying to find some interesting material. Sometimes we'll do a deep track like Can't You Hear Me Knockin', She Smiled Sweetly. We did pulled out of the drawer at one point. And so it's a process, and we work very hard at it because we realize that there's hardcore fans that want to hear the unusual songs, and we realize that there's first-time or fairly new fans that want to hear those iconic songs. So we work hard at it. We don't just willy-nilly throw it together.
Chuck, we had a call earlier from somebody that lives near you, and I know we were primarily talking about music, but you spend so much time on other things, and I know it's a passion of yours, but they complimented you on what you have given back to that area in so many different ways. And I would like to ask you to describe that and the genesis of it.
Well, listen, I love our community of Middle Georgia here, Macon, Georgia, and the surrounding cities involved. One of the things that I do that I very, very much enjoy, and that's a problem that we see all over the country and all over the world, and that is work with the homeless. There's a organization called Daybreak that is actually under the DePaul umbrella. DePaul, as you probably know, is a worldwide organization that, amongst other things, they do work on the homeless issue. And so we promote an annual event at Daybreak to help the homeless in Middle Georgia, to raise awareness, to raise funds. And that's been quite successful. But, there's other causes that we like to contribute to, children's causes mainly. But I love the community, and I love being a part of it, and I love trying to do what I can to help out every now and then.
Chuck, I want to return to music before we forget we're out of time. We're only about 6 minutes past the commercial break, but don't worry about that. Just talk a little bit about the moments in your life. I mean, we've talked about the ones that you're most associated with, but you've played, you've recorded, you've pretty much, there's hardly anyone you haven't met. Asking you to chisel that down to one or two, but I think we'd all be curious about some of the encounters you've had in your illustrious career.
Well, you know, with the Stones, you never know who's going to be coming to a concert, especially if you play a place like L.A. We had Matthew McConaughey and all kind of actors and other characters come to the shows, and that's a lot of fun, you know, to see people that you admire and that maybe you've seen them in films or whatever, and they like the Stones and they want to come and party, right? Billy Bob Thornton is a good friend of mine. He was out in L.A. as well. And Billy is a musician, as you may know. He has a band called the Box Masters, and so we talk off and on occasionally. And you know, it's amazing. I mean, you have politicians, you have sports figures. Of course, we talked about Coach Saban and others that enjoy the Stones' music. So it's a heck of a ride. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, you've been out there with I mean, I mentioned Clapton, Mayer, Aretha Franklin, Chuck Berry. I mean, the list sounds like the soundtrack of rock music. But when you first started to run into these people, I mean, you were a young kid trying to make it. I mean, how did you keep your wits?
Well, first of all, recognizing the opportunities. You know, when I was asked to be in the Allman Brothers Band at age 20, you know, the first thought that went through my head is, don't screw it up, Chuck. and you know, but the other thing is you want to find ways to contribute. You know, they're hiring you because they believe in you, or they believe you can bring something to the table. So be sure that you do bring something to the table, and be a good listener. That's one of the things I always say when people ask about, you know, how have you done what you've done? Be a good listener, you know, whether you're listening to the music and to each of the instruments and the contributions all the musicians are making, or listening to the song itself. What is the song asking you to do? And you listen to the producer of the recordings and the artists themselves, you know, what are they, you know, seeking out of you to contribute? But the important thing is to make that contribution.
Finally, just the view from the stage. I don't think most of us have any earthly idea what it looks like. And you've done, I mean, there's nowhere in the world you haven't played. I mean, does it ever get old?
Never, Paul, never, never, never. I mean, a couple of quick memories when I was with the Allman Brothers Band. It was actually 51 years ago now. We played Watkins Glen, the racetrack.
Ooh, wow.
The Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers Band, and the band. And we broke the record of Woodstock at the time. We had 600,000 people for a one-day event there. With the Stones, we played in Rio on Copacabana Beach to 1.5 million people.
Oh, my goodness.
That was pretty cool. And then one of the other great memories with the Stones was playing in Havana in Cuba. It was a free show, just as was the Rio show. But to see 750,000 was the estimate of the native folks come out and see the show. And most of them couldn't speak the language, but you see them mouthing the words to the songs. And that was pretty cool.
Chuck, you've come a long way from playing the YMCA in Alabama on Friday night. What a career.
Thanks, Paul. A real pleasure to be with you, man. Thank you so much.
It was our pleasure. I will remember this forever. Chuck Leavell joining us for quite an extended period, but what a memory. We'll take a very short break.